I'm Prudence Ferreira. I'm a senior member of the Carbon Neutral Design Group at BR+A Consulting Engineers, and I lead their Passivhaus team. And for those of you who might be joining us for the very first time, we're an inclusive gathering, welcoming absolutely everyone. So whether you're new to building science, zero energy, passive house, greenhouse gas emission reduction, or you consider yourself an expert and becoming more expert by the day, you are absolutely in the right place. And I'd also like to welcome back my co-host, Monty Paulson. Monty.
Thank you, Prudence. It's very nice to be back. Had a really nice 2 months off. In my time away, I've been learning to be a little more patient with myself and a little less patient with the pace of change on climate adaptation and mitigation. So shall we just do a cheers to everybody to a year of Passivhaus Accelerator, a year of a community pitching in, great presenters, great hosts, incredible questions, and Sean's costumes. Cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers. Cheers. Cheers to that.
Cheers.
I just have so many great memories over this past year. And with all the change that has happened for me personally and all the limbo that we've all been in with COVID, this happy hour has provided such an amazing source of learning and camaraderie, community, start of advocacy and activism. And I feel like you guys are all our family. We're all family now. And instead of just waiting to see each other at conferences, we get to see each other every single week. And I'm so grateful to Sean and Monty for the brilliant idea, to Mike and the Accelerator for supporting it, to Zach for coordinating, and now Sydney for supporting the organization, and Mary James joining forces with the magazine and the summits. But most of all, I am just grateful as hell for all of you, and especially all of the new voices in our community, keeping all of us, we're keeping each other sane and firing up each hump day with a serious dose of inspiration. So cheers to that. Thank you, guys.
Cheers.
All right, so let's get ready for another great happy hour. Our featured guest this episode is going to be Kim Walton, sharing her know-how on low embodied carbon preserved wood foundations. But first, over to Zach.
Great. Thank you, Prudence. And we're going to go into some paper plate awards. I just want to say a couple things first. And one is that the Passivhaus Accelerator itself is 2 years old. And we are a collaborative online platform for sharing innovation and thought leadership in Passivhaus design and construction. We publish articles and interviews, produce weekly virtual confabs with Passivhaus pioneers from around the world, and we elevate the work and programming of the Passivhaus movement's leaders, practitioners, and organizations through interviews, articles, social media campaigns, videos, and podcasts. Our aim is to catalyze zero carbon building by accelerating the adoption of Passivhaus building. And this 1 year ago, this was a very pivotal moment for the Accelerator, the launching of the Global Passivhaus Happy Hour, and has been stated that actually didn't happen by the Passivhaus Accelerator. That was something that Sean St. Amour and Monty Paulson made happen. I think it was called the first virtual Passivhaus social. So I want to just say thank you, Sean and Monty, for making all this happen and kicking it off.
Thank you. And the pivotal conversation came after Sean and I did it for about 3 weeks and panicked and realized we needed help and someone who actually knew how to run this. So here's to Zach for pulling it all together.
Thank you, Zach. It's an honor, and as you know, it's a team effort. And of course, shortly after that happened, we were joined by Prudence Ferreira. Thank you, Prudence, for being co-host. And this has just been an amazing ride. So I want to point out to everybody that actually 98% of the Global Passivhaus presentations are available on our website. If you go to our homepage and click on Global Passivhaus Happy Hour and you go to that page, you can scroll down and access all of those presentations, recordings of them. Also, we have both full-length versions and the presentation-only version of all of those happy hours on our YouTube page, YouTube channel at youtube.com/C for channel/Passivhaus Accelerator. So check that out, please. I'm about to get into the award ceremony here, but first I want to thank the team, and many of these people have already been thanked, but I'm going to do it anyway. So Sydney Gladu, writer and content coordinator, Mary James, director of publications, Jay Fox, writer, Dylan Ingley and Justin Ingley, video production, Tamara Milnick, sponsorship manager, Beth Gonzalez, bookkeeping, Leanne Maxwell, magazine design, Matt Rothenberg, web developer, Matthew Cutler Welsh, Passivhaus podcast co-host, Kevin Brennan, Mark Willey, and Sean St. Amour, construction tech co-hosts, Prudence Ferreira, Monty Paulson, Sean St. Amour, Global Passivhaus Happy Hour, our Passivhaus Accelerator advisors, our Passivhaus Accelerator sponsors, our Passivhaus Accelerator presenters and authors and content providers who present at these programming, as well as on our website, and of course, the Passivhaus Accelerator community, all of you. Thank you very much. And last but not least, Michael Ingley, the founder of Passivhaus Accelerator. So please, another toast here. We're gonna toast a little bit. All right.
Cheers. Cheers.
Cheers. So if you wouldn't mind unmuting yourself, we're going to be, I would love to do some celebration for each of these winners. But first I want to do a really fast rundown of the happy hour. 1 year, 5 continents, 51 presentations, 63 presenters, 6,120 minutes together, and 12,044 views and counting of the video content that's been created from all this. We've had 2 healthy building presentations, 4 school community and community center presentations, 9 single family home presentations, 9 commercial and mixed use presentations, 11 retrofit presentations, 12 making Passivhaus possible presentations, so policy, education, financing, 13 affordable housing presentations, 27 multifamily presentations, and now we're ready for the Paper Plate Awards.
Yay. Woo!
Woohoo! All right.
Yeah. I'll drink to that.
Are you ready?
Come on.
Here's the first one.
Yeah.
Most
Yeah.
YouTube views. This is pretty exciting. Tessa Bradley with over 1,000 views. Sally Godber with 753. Natalie Leonard, just happened last week. She already has 721 views for her video. And of course, Tim McDonald at 508 views. Please, everybody, let's celebrate those winners of the most YouTube views. Thank you.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, fantastic. So Early Bird Award, you know, we get together 30 minutes before every presentation for socializing. We have 2 winners of the Early Bird Award for Passivhaus, the Global Passivhaus Happy Hour. That's Louisa in Rhode Island and Bruce in Milwaukee. Woohoo!
All right.
Yay.
All right.
Thank you for
Fantastic.
joining me.
Okay, youngest Passivhaus enthusiast, Leah, who is his daughter.
Faster
All
spot.
right.
Oh.
Yes, that is a wonderful award. Okay, so most slides in the shortest amount of time.
Ian.
I know this is hotly contested, and the judges have had to deliberate about this one for quite a while. But the winner was Giza Zellerman from Cornerstone Architecture. If you saw that, you know that she won. Please, some applause for Giza. All right. And a closely related one is Fastest Talker, also highly contested, and that goes to Lois Arena. Please, everyone give Lois a hand.
Yeah. Remember that.
All right, so best pun, and there are a lot of competing puns here, but finally we decided that the award goes to funk. And funk is a term that I think migrated over from the Passivhaus Accelerator construction tech. Kevin Brennan, I think, is the coiner of this term, and it roughly is translated to Passivhaus delivery prowess. It also inspired this term during the construction tech, build funky, feel good. And we've turned it into a t-shirt design. We haven't actually created this t-shirt, but if you'd like us to, please let us know in chat. All right. Now on the topic of t-shirts, loudest not winner of a Passivhaus Accelerator t-shirt. And this award goes to, and I think many of us know who this is, this goes to, is Lloyd Alter. Congratulations, Lloyd, for loudest.
Thank you,
winner.
thank you, thank you.
The unwinner.
All right.
Want a dinner and never
Oh.
want a shirt.
So most inquisitive, which is also asked the most questions goes to Susan from Toronto. Who
Yay,
was very
Susan!
Harvey doesn't win?
Well, you know what?
Awesome.
There's also the question, the award for most predictable question. And you may get a little clue
Harvey.
here from the image here. It goes to Harvey M for what is the per square footage cost of that?
Oh my
I
God.
knew it was going to be that.
How come you guys didn't send me a sash?
Cheers.
It's in the mail, Harvey.
Sash is in the mail. Sash
Got
is in
stuck at the
mail. Okay.
border.
So on the
$3 bill, Zach.
yeah, right. On the theme of money, presentation that triggered the most aware sensor purchases goes to Bill Hayward of the Hayward Score. It was quite an evening. I think a lot of us have those aware sensors thanks to that night.
No one has them.
No,
Nobody
one
does. No,
Nobody does.
nobody does.
So best Passive House theme song goes to none other than Tim McDonald for his amazing
I want to
R&B
hear that again.
ode
So
to
good.
Passive House. Unfortunately, we
good.
had to pull that section of the video from YouTube, so we had to excise it because the backup there were copyright issues. But we'll have to figure out a time where we can replay it live for everybody. Okay, most inspiring presentation. This is the final award, and the winner goes to all 51 presentations to the Global Passive House Happy Hour.
All right.
Congratulations, everybody.
All winners.
Indeed. All right. So that is it for the award ceremony, and it's been an amazing year. So everybody, I guess one more toast to an amazing silver lining to this COVID craziness. The Passive House Happy Hour.
To the green lining.
Oh yeah, the
Green lining, there you go.
lining. All right.
Thank-
Here's to
Thank you
that.
so much, everybody.
Mhm.
Aaron, go bra.
Indeed.
Thank you, everyone.
You know, Zach,
Absolutely.
the full program of an international conference is in the range of 48, 50 presentations. If you were to go and watch all of these on video, you've basically learned about as much as you would have gotten if you'd gotten to go one of the conferences that didn't actually happen in person this year.
Yeah, but you
it's
can't
an
ever see
amazing
them
amount of
all.
stuff.
It
There's
is
only four of them
remarkable.
parallel.
For free.
Yeah,
That's
the,
right, for free with a
Yeah.
PH.
and all the feedback and the questions and the conversation, you don't get
cost per
that
square
at a
foot.
lot of conferences.
But no schnitzel.
I'm here.
That's not
You're
very
not able to see
sustainable.
Lloyd shake his head a lot either. If you're
Tofu schnitzel. Tofu schnitzel, yeah?
I have a schnauzer. Is that close to a schnitzel?
A schnauzer schnitzel. Nice.
Oh, that's just bad. Don't do it. Go there.
All meat. All meat.
Oh, no.
All right, so we because that award ceremony lasted the minutes that it lasted, we don't have time to go into small groups. So I'm going to go into quick announcements, and then Prudence is going to introduce our fine speaker.
All right, thanks, Zach. That was great. Wow, you talked really fast too. You had a lot to cover in that short period of time. So tonight we get to hear from a founder of a small architectural design and consulting practice. Her name is Kim Walton of Bow Crow Design. Such a cool name. I love that name. And she spent the last 40 years designing energy efficient homes and small buildings from the foothills in Alberta. She's been using her mad skills in energy modeling and building science to design and manage passive house and net zero projects across Canada. And she's certified as a passive house designer and a phase builder. And she's going to talk to us tonight about preserved wood foundations. Preserved wood is a low cost, low carbon alternative to concrete. And we're excited to hear all about the lessons that she's learned. Welcome so much, Kim, and thanks for joining us. You are muted,
you
Kim. Yep.
I'm
now we-
unmuted now, right?
Now we
Awesome.
gotcha.
Awesome. Great. I'm happy to be here. This is great. And I'm really pleased that I can be here for Sean's birthday. That's awesome. And I'm hoping to get an award. So we start the year over again. So I can get an award for next year, right?
Indeed.
Indeed. Okay.
Kim, can you start by doing a little introduction as I get your slideshow ready here? I need to switch gears
Sure.
real quick. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Okay. So here I am. I'm in the foothills of Alberta, and as soon as the slideshow comes up, I'll show you exactly where that is. It's pretty far away from most of you. I think there's some people from Alberta, and I do recognize quite a few people here from Passive Buildings Canada, and that's awesome. Great. Okay. Here we are. So that's me, and we can go into the next slide. Zach, it's great. So this is the house I live in on an acreage, and we're very close to the mountains in Alberta. I've been doing this for a long time. This picture of me when I'm about 12, and I'm preaching the virtues of integrated greenhouses, which used to be a good idea, but it's not a good idea anymore. Next slide. So this is where I live, and that's not in any city. It's north of Calgary, and it's west of Red Deer and south of Edmonton. Really not any place in particular, about a 45-hour drive from Toronto, and over a 12-hour drive from Vancouver. I am the president of Passive Buildings Canada and the treasurer for Passivhaus Alberta, and I'm a member of Passivhaus Canada. Next slide. So just a quick definition. I see that wood is used quite a few times in this definition, but wood foundation is built of wood, and the wood is preserved to resist deterioration and rot from water and from insects. So next slide. So why use a preserved wood foundation? And to be honest, I've been involved in projects with preserved wood foundations for a long time. And it is a preferred foundation. It's my first go-to. I try and convince all my clients to use wood foundation first. So some of those reasons are special equipment's not needed. Specialty trades are not needed. You don't need forms on site. It's a little less weather dependent for installation than concrete is in terms of freezing weather. The panels can be prefabricated, and more than once for projects I've worked on, panels were being prefabricated when it was too cold to work on anything else, and they were brought out of the shop as soon as spring came. It's possible to avoid using concrete completely, which is something that many of us have become aware of the positive aspects of. It's really easy to insulate, which is one of my favorite things about wood foundations. Also, when we're building on a tight lot, it eats up less interior space than concrete does when we're trying to add insulation to it. And wood is a carbon sink. And then the next slide. And the reasons for not using a wood foundation, engineering is required. And some people perceive that as an added expense, and perhaps not. A lot of people don't like working with engineers. I love working with engineers, but a lot of people also have a lack of experience with preserved wood foundations and don't feel very confident with them. They're not as common as they were once. And a lot of people have had bad experiences with poorly installed PWF foundations, and that is really too bad, and it's really had a bad effect on the perception of wood foundations. You really need to have attention to detail. It's not something that just gets slapped up, because those ones that got slapped up are the ones that fall down. And there's concerns about the devaluation of wood foundations, or devaluing a property if a wood foundation is used. And that's not untrue. In other words, without an engineer certificate, without proper inspections, a wood foundation can devalue your property. There's a misbelief that concrete is stronger than wood, which is not true. We know that concrete is not very strong, and that the strength in concrete comes from the steel and the concrete. A couple of things that are true, though: it's difficult to anchor for wind loads to wood foundation. It's also problematic, and it could be problematic in seismic areas without proper engineering. And these days, it's really hard to find the materials, so there isn't enough of a market for it, and it's becoming increasingly difficult to find preserved wood material. Next slide. So there's chemicals in preserved wood, and they're not very nice, especially in CCA wood, which is still used. I think some people think that it's not used, and it certainly is used. It's certainly incised CCA wood is definitely used in wood foundations in this part of the world. But these chemicals are quite well bound to the wood, and there's really no fear of off-gassing. And as long as you're not licking the wood or trying to eat it, it's reasonably safe. Next slide. This information came from Chris Magwood. This is using Chris's new software for figuring out the carbon storage for materials. So this is comparing wood foundations with the information that he has with concrete, and it looks like wood foundations are a carbon sink. What we don't have we don't have good information about the energy that's used for preserving wood, and so these numbers might change in the future. Next slide. Next slide.
Yeah, sorry. There's a little, sometimes there are sketches that people accidentally put onto the slides.
I saw that. People were drawing on it.
Yeah, and so I need to go clear that, and then
Okay.
I need to then exit out of something. So sorry, but
But I'm going to be able to draw, right, Zach? I'll be able to draw.
You can absolutely draw, and I will try
Awesome.
not to clear your drawings. Thank you.
Okay, great. So this is another map of Canada, and a couple of things to note on this, and actually I guess I can draw it this time, is that this is Toronto, and that's Vancouver, and this is the rest of Canada. So there is a lot of area outside of those two areas, and all of the area in the yellow is really far away from concrete plants. The yellow and the green, a lot of those places there's no concrete to be had even if you wanted it. Northern Manitoba and northern Saskatchewan, wood foundations are pretty common because they don't really have a choice. Okay, next slide. So a lot of the information that I use, and this is a bit of a Bible in terms of wood foundations for me, the go-to manual, and that's the Canadian Wood Council's book on wood foundations. And so I'm just going to go through some basics for wood foundations. And so one of the very first things is the fact that there needs to be good drainage and a sump in wood foundations. It's important. The backfill that's used for wood foundations shouldn't just be the site material. It really should be well-drained material, pit run if you can find it. Again, as I said before, you don't need to use concrete for the slab. Wood sleepers are fine. And there's all kinds of rules behind that. And most of those rules have to do with making sure that water can't get into the building, and that that there's a lot of good drainage. There's a lot of rules around pads, a lot of wood put into pads. There's a lot of, I'll just change that arrow. There's a lot of members used. There's also some problems, a lot of wood used along stairways when there's openings right beside the wood foundation. Maybe more wood than you could imagine is being used. And then some rules around how beam pockets work. Concrete footings can be used with wood foundations. So for the Wood Council, from the point of view of the people who know about wood foundations, the ideal is putting wood footings on top of gravel. But concrete footings are easier, they take less time and can be less expensive. The big deal about using concrete footings is to be sure, again, that water can't sit on top of or underneath the footings. So either the footings are poured over gravel, or there's a way, there's a PVC added to the footings so that water can not sit in and around footings. Next slide. So size of building doesn't matter. This house, this is the same house. And one picture is a house before it was renovated. So this is a project I worked on in the late 80s and early 90s for a family. And this is one of those integrated greenhouses that just probably was probably not a good idea, just too big. There was a young lady who lived in this house with her family, and she grew up and she bought it from her parents and decided that she'd like to make some changes, which was a good thing. So I got to work on a renovation of a house that I'd done 30 years later. And I just want to show you some of the things that went on with this building that has a wood foundation. Next slide. So back in the day, this is what we did for drawings before there was the computers were available. And this is the hand drawings with all the details and how this wood foundation, how this house went together, and how the wood foundation was integrated into this project. And this is a photo, of course, of the framing. Next slide. So what we did with this project was we created a post underneath a post, a treated post underneath a post. And this is some of the details. So this is, the post was built up underneath with a double eye joist above for the really tall wall in that greenhouse. All on wood footings. The whole place is on wood footings, and very big differential in backfill, high backfill on one side and low on the walkout side. Oh yeah, and that was me doing a site visit. Next slide. So the photo on the left-hand side is photo of during construction, and as we tore apart the greenhouse 30 years later, we found that there was absolutely no problems in terms of water damage or any impact from the backfill in the greenhouse. This was a multi-leveled space with a hot tub in the middle, and all of that got torn out. Next slide. What we did find, though, which is pretty amazing, because acoustical sealant is supposed to stay wet forever, and I'm sure everybody's been told that, but there was acoustical sealant that had been exposed to the air in this basement, and it was dry. So this is a photo to prove that. The other photo on the right-hand side is a wood footing that was behind some backfill, and there's just absolutely no sign of any damage or water infiltration at all. Next slide. As I said earlier, the panelization of foundation is one of the conveniences. And in this case, this house was brought to site, a pretty remote site, northwest of Calgary. The whole foundation was panelized in a shop and brought to the site, as were the walls for this little house too. This young lady is now in architecture school. Not mine, somebody else's. Next slide. A pretty big house, mostly slab on grade and a 2-story over the garage for this project. And next slide. And I thought I'd show you this one because we did 2 things here. On one side of the house, what we did was frame the south wall quite differently than the rest of the house. So it's a 2x6 wall that's strapped. And on this side, and so that's on the right-hand side, and this side we have a short preserved wood foundation, and there is a insulated skirt around that side of the foundation. But on the other side, on the north side, we did a Larson truss wall with an integrated bearing wall, and on that side we did a slab thickening instead of the wood foundation. So we combined foundation types in this case. It made sense at the time. Next slide. So one of the things that we did, and often a detail is with the slab thickening, is to stop just brushing this across here, is to do the door bucks with wood foundation outside of the slab thickening, just so that we have some bearing for the doors. And the other drawing on the left-hand side is just to show the insulated skirt for the shallow foundation, that's only 19 inches, the whole foundation. So, frost gets down to about 8 feet in this area. So we do need to protect from frost. Next slide. This is that foundation. This is looking from the south side. And so this is the wood foundation with insulation on the inside, and the foundation walls were used as forms for pouring the slab. Next slide. So this is a house in Calgary that was part of the Equilibrium program in 2010, 2011. And the secret that this house has is that it has a wood foundation. So next slide. This wood foundation is balloon framed on 3 sides, and it has wood footings over wood plates over top of gravel footings for its footings, and it was reasonably complicated because of high backfill and walkout. Next slide. So the great thing about this project is that we had tons of really good photos. So I'm going to walk you through the process of this project. So this is the footing layout for the project. And the thing to note here is that this is a wetland in this area, and all of the footings, the bottom side of the footings, flow to this corner and eventually into a pond that's over here. So there's no weeping tile, it's all just below grade drainage. Next slide. This is how you do a chalk line in gravel, and that's with a jackhammer. You can see the chalk line in this photo right here. Next slide. The footings are huge, really not a one-man project or one-girl project. You can see that leveling them is a pain, and it's a hands and knees operation. Next slide. And then leveling the plates in gravel is not easy either. So it does take some patience. Next slide. And so the next few slides will just show the erection of the walls over the gravel. Next slide. And showing the difference in height between as the landscape changed in this location. So that tall wall is, I think the backfill on that tall wall is about 11 feet. Next slide. And as the walls are being erected, the walls need to be braced, which is something that you don't need to do with concrete this in the same way. Next slide. The other really great thing about wood foundations is that this part that's going to be buried, so this will be buried gravel on both sides. So this is looking from the garage. So where my arrow is going to be the garage slab up at the top of the wall, and the outside of this wall will have the gravel driveway. And then this part is the house. So this is really easy to insulate and bury below grade, and gives us a great buffer from the exterior. Next slide. When I saw this photo the other day, I just freaked out because that's not Stego. And and it's just 6 mil poly, but what we used to do was bury it so it wouldn't get all racked. And I'm not sure that I would do the same procedure now, but you can see the plywood on the inside of the foundation to the height of where the foundation or the slab will be, or the gravel will be in the insulation, then the gravel and the slab. Next slide. And then it snows in winter. So that is a problem sometimes. Next slide. More insulation being installed here, and you can see that where the backfill is very high, how close the studs are together. And for this wall, which is a shear wall, it's an interior wall, and so it's built with white wood, not treated wood, with the bottoms of the studs being field treated, which is completely adequate and fine. Next slide. I wanted to show this slide just to show how these Larson trusses, these site built trusses work. The bearing part of the truss sits on the wood foundation, and it's cantilevered and just hanging over the outside of the foundation, and we'll have rigid insulation installed underneath it after this part of the work is done. Next slide. And again, some bracing. So this is a good picture of the bracing and how extensive it needs to be. Next slide. balloon framing for the floor system, and you can see that this wall right here had to be higher than the floor system itself, which is really easily integrated into the wall framing system as the walls went up. Next slide. Adding exterior insulation, and there's this contractor had this interesting idea of doing a poly flash between the layers of insulation on the outside, just to give an added redundancy to be sure that there would be no problem with water getting behind the insulation and down beside the wood foundation wall. Next slide. Rigid insulation skirt really required for the shallow foundation on the exposed side of the foundation, and another better picture of the Larson trusses. Also, the foundation coating is only being applied where there's going to be some backfill. Even though it's completely buried behind insulation, there's still the foundation coating is added. Next slide. And this photo is just showing again how the insulation is installed, and this insulation right here will be installed right here, and there will be again the foundation coating is following the finish grade. Next slide. Backfilling, and you can see that we are backfilling with native material here, but it is well drained. It's a pit run. But what you really want to look at is this, which is a tarp from some farmers in around north of Calgary. And they're tarps that they couldn't use anymore. They're hay tarps, and they have some holes in them. And we use that to protect the foam from the backfill. And it's a bit of a recycling project. And that is just some added protection to the foundation. Instead of a dimple mat, and we could talk about dimple mat later, but this is instead of doing that. Next slide. And then the tarp is covered with treated ply, again, where it's going to be, where the backfill will be. Next slide. So a couple little notes to end off that series of photos, and one is that on all of the preserved wood foundations, there's a corner piece that has to go on to stabilize the corners. That's just something that happens all the time. And again, this is another photo of a field treatment of bearing and shear walls in the base, in the lower level. Next slide. So I know I'm rushing through this. I just want to be sure that you get to see everything. This house is called, this is actually a shop with a little house attached, and it's called the Yak Shack because there's some yaks on this farm. Next slide. And I wanted to show you this project because kind of doing a reverse truss on this side. This is the bearing wall on the outside instead of the inside, and we have the non-bearing portion of the wall on the inside. So wood foundations can do that. Again, balloon framed, and the shop that's behind the project on the back side of the project, this whole portion is a pole shed. Does anybody know what a pole shed is? Very easy and less expensive to build than normal building. And the house is built independently of the pole shed, and we just join them together. So the pole shed is a wood structure with wood footings as well. Next slide. Garages sometimes can be built with 4-foot walls. We were doing 4-foot walls in this case to be below grade, below frost level, in this case with still an insulated skirt, and just with plywood on both sides of the top with insulation. So the backfill will be in about here, and all of the fill for this project will go right through the studs. That's a pretty normal way of doing wood foundations for garages. Next slide. And this same project, this contractor likes to use a little pony wall inside and outside of foundations to support the edge of the slab. And in this case, it's for a sidewalk. And you can see that this is a concrete footing. In this case, this project used concrete footings instead of wood footings. And you can see that there's a mat underneath that for drainage in this case, and gravel. And next slide. Same project, concrete footing, blue skin on the outside of this foundation. And the blue skin is wrapped around the footing, the top of the footing, just so that water can't get into underside of the wood plates. And there's gravel underneath this footing. Okay, next slide. That's it for my presentation. So I had a hard time choosing photos and choosing projects, and hopefully I haven't taken too long. Some of the information that some places that you might find interesting to get more information. There was a beer and BS program on preserved wood foundations. Building Science, Joe Seabrook had done an excellent article on wood foundations recently. And this is also the link to the Canadian Wood Council specifications for wood basements. So that's it, and thank you very much. Thanks for this opportunity, and I'm just going to plug Passive Buildings Canada and Passivhaus Alberta again. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Kim. That was really fantastic. So we're going to roll into general questions first, and then if you're able to stick around with us, we'll move into the after hour.
Awesome. Awesome.
Yes.
All right, Kim, we got lots in the queue. We're going to start off with Susan, who has hopefully a simple one.
My simple question, because like I'm too drunk to ask a really intelligent question right now. It was just, I wanted to know what green building initiatives, if any, are there in the province of Alberta, Canada? Wondering if you could speak to that.
It is the province of Alberta, and there aren't any.
Okay, thank you. That's my question.
Yeah, there were some with the previous government, but they've kind of gone away. So there are some for light bulbs and for bigger
light bulbs
equipment. Yeah.
Just save the world. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and heating and cooling equipment for bigger buildings. But for the most part, there's no incentives to do this kind of work, and there hasn't been for a long time.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks, Susan. Glad you're enjoying your green beer. Harvey, you have a bunch. Want to start with one, and then we'll come back to you in a bit, please.
Yeah, unlike Susan, I'm too sober to ask a smart question. So mine was just there was a whole bunch of them, but I think the most important one for me was about the drainage. I know you had shown on your drawing that it was going all the way around and off to a pond, but if you were in a different location, would you be looking at French drains and draining a different drainage solution instead of the one that you showed?
Yeah, I mean, it's site specific for sure. At the Yak Shack, it was a really wet site, not really ideal for wood foundation. One of the photos that I didn't put in, there's a bit of a pond that ended up happening right at the east side of the building. And we really had to be careful about how that collection of water was drained off. I mean, this whole quarter section, so that was easy to do. But soils can be a problem with wood foundations for sure. If they're not appropriate, you just have to be sure that you can drain away for sure. Big deal. But it doesn't matter if it's a wood foundation or concrete foundation. You have the same problem. You don't want a concrete foundation sitting in a pond either.
Yeah, I guess that you just think more about rot or whatever with the wood. That's the reason I brought it up. But thank you.
You know, if you saw all of the protections that go in and for the wood foundation, the wood is never really in water. It's never really exposed to a wet situation. And if it is, it's because something hasn't been detailed correctly.
Yeah, because you didn't have a detail, but thank you so much. That was a great presentation, by the way.
Great, thanks.
Okay, Harvey, I'll come back to you in a little bit. Monty had a couple questions, and that kind of spoke about one of them is how curious, he was curious about soil properties and climate affect the pro cons of wood foundation. And that's again typed from the guy who lives in a tidal rainforest. But the other question he had was the additional gravel itself included in the embodied carbon calcs presented earlier?
What a good question. And I don't think so. I'm reasonably certain that it's not. And, you know, I have to say in Alberta, especially in this part of Alberta, we do take gravel for granted. It's everywhere. So, and it's really easy to get. And some of it doesn't even need to be crushed. Honestly, it's just really available for us to use. So we are pretty spoiled that way. But that's a really good point, and I'll bring that up with Chris. So I'll get Chris to do these numbers properly. I think it's great.
Perfect. Thank you.
Great presentation. Thank you.
Great.
All right. Moving along. Cornerstone Architecture, which I assume is Scott.
I think it's me actually.
Oh, sorry, Will.
Well,
Okay, Will you go first, and then we'll go to Scott.
Maybe Scott did ask me. He probably asked a few. No, it was really just, again, perhaps the wood foundation is obviously more common in Canada than certainly it is in the UK. But having tried to get a mortgage in the past on a property that was looking to use some kind of slightly bespoke tech, we kind of got shut down pretty early on. We just said they won't lend against it. Is that something you've kind of come up against, and or is it just?
You bet, yeah. So the secret is to get an engineer involved, and the secret is to find an engineer that wants to be involved. So if the engineer isn't into it, or then it's just a no-go. One project I'm working on right now, for instance, I really wanted to put on use a wood foundation, and my regular go-to engineer, who would always bend over backwards to help me with a wood foundation, just wouldn't let it go. We had to do concrete, and that had to do with wind loading and a really tall wall and anchoring the system, and we really couldn't come up with a way that he felt comfortable. And I mean, he's signing off on it for that particular project. So it's not always the best solution, but if you can, then I think it's a good solution.
Sure. Thanks.
Thanks, Will. And we'll go over to Scott. Mr. Scott Kennedy. Oh, he's frozen.
Related to building sites.
He's frozen. Oh, there he is.
I'm just concerned about the possibility of getting condensation on the inside of that plywood surface when you have kind of a bad insulation inside the cavity, and unless you have a lot of rigid on the outside. Is there a problem there? Have you done WUFI calculations, or how does that work?
Yeah, no, I've never even seen it. And I mean, that was one of the reasons for showing the particular project, the big house that's 30 years old. And after we removed everything from that project, because a lot of the vapor barrier was not done properly. It wasn't really well insulated. There were lots of gaps in the fiberglass that was installed between the studs. And there was no signs of any condensation at all. So in that house, one of the reasons that one of the things they wanted to do was to fix a leak. There was some water damage. And at first I thought, oh gosh, this wood foundation is going to be a mess. So it was not from, the wood foundation was from a poorly detailed window higher up. And if you know anything about how that works, it can just destroy an entire building. And interestingly enough, all of the white wood rotten, and all of the treated wood just fine. And even at that, because there was reasonably good details on the outside of the wood foundation, there was no damage at the basement level interior from that wet window from above. There was around windows that were below the windows that were leaking. So the detailing on the outside makes such a big difference, and keeping the water away from the outside is the trick.
So if I can sneak in one more question, it was, what kind of membranes are you using on the outside? Like, what are you typically using?
So the blue skin's a go-to these days. I think blue skin's pretty easy to get. That, I think that probably is a good idea. I have a problem. I mentioned this in the presentation with dimple fabric, which I thought would be a really great idea. So the reason that it isn't, see, Lance is cutting his neck off for this. So the problem with the dimple fabric, or the dimple material, is that it gets yanked down. So we're finding that it was far below, it ended up being far below the top of grade, and not doing the work that it was supposed to do, and water was getting behind it instead of being directed to the front side of it. So I wouldn't recommend that. I don't know about using it with concrete, and honestly, there's some things I just avoid, so I don't know enough about what that would do with concrete foundations either. So I would avoid that that material. The tarp works surprisingly well. The tarp was really good at redirecting the material or the moisture. And the backfill has so much to do with that though too. Well-drained sites are really awesome.
I can't build a building here without a full membrane and then a dimple board. We have to put it on.
Because you have to, yeah, you have to, yeah. Yeah, that's kind of silly.
All right, Scott, thanks. Moving along, we have Enrique, and I appreciate Enrique. It only took me 40 weeks before I could pronounce his name properly and make sure that I was talking about the right person. So Enrique from Vermont.
Don't worry. Thank you very much. My concern about treated wood is that the chromium-based chemicals that they are using, which they tend to leach into the ground. Do you have any concerns about that? Because other industries like the brick, like the refractory bricks industry for the smelters and steel mill industry, they have been going away from the chromium-based materials because of that. It's a very bad contaminant of the groundwater and the ground. So that's
true. It's true. So if your wood foundation is exposed to the ground, you've done a bad job. It shouldn't be actually exposed to the ground or the water or the ground around surrounding the buildings. So it's essentially encapsulated and not exposed to the interior, not exposed to the exterior. So that is a problem. What you're saying is a problem, not with necessarily wood foundations, but with telephone or power poles, which are all CCA treated. They have to be. That's the rule. So that's really where the groundwater would be affected.
Okay. Thank you. Good presentation.
Thanks.
Thanks. All right, moving along to Barbara in Oz. Had a couple questions. Barbara.
Thank you. Loved your presentation. I'm planning to build a passive house, tear down my existing home and put up a passive house. I would love to use Glavel. I have found a Glavel substitute here in Australia. Is that a suitable foundation? And then I'll go on to my green wall question.
So is it, it's treated material and it's incised?
It's foamed glass.
Okay.
Call it Schaum glass, foamed glass.
Okay. Yeah.
So I know I can get it here in Australia. I haven't done a comparative costing between that and fine gravel. Does it matter what kind of stone the gravel is?
Nope, not at all. Nope, not at all. No, I don't know about leveling wood footings over top of foam glass. I don't know if anybody's ever done that, Barbara. I don't know that that's ever been done.
Okay, we'll check that out. And then the other thing, I was very interested in your comment about putting a greenhouse in, because one thing I would like in my home is a green wall. So this is a picture of a green wall in actually a German hairdressing shop. It's in Cologne, and I saw it in there, and I've been photographing green walls whenever I see them. So it's not a full-blown greenhouse. It's not got the huge glass windows in front of it, but it would perhaps, you have to have some kind of watering system for the plants. Do you see any particular issues with that?
Water and dirt inside houses means bugs.
Yeah, I know.
And it also means maintenance. And for many years, we integrated greenhouses into buildings, houses, and a few of them were successful because the people who live there wanted them to be successful, but they require a lot of maintenance, so a devotion and love, and then you'll be successful. But otherwise, you really have to be managing stuff all the time.
Yeah, I'm hoping it can be sort of more hydroponic than dirt-based. But the other reason I'm really interested in it is that the kinds of plants I'd use pull volatile organic compounds out of the air. And last year, during the bushfires that just surrounded Canberra for a month,
Right.
I mean, I live in a house that's like a sieve, you know, air just
Right.
comes in from outside. I'm sure the passive house wouldn't, but even the experience of colleagues here who put HEPA filters over their mechanical ventilation system, you still had some stuff getting in, and yeah, that's why I'm interested in the plant's ability to filter out air.
You know,
So,
I've read recently that plants don't actually do that. I mean, I believe that for decades, but I've read recently that that is actually not a thing. I don't
oh,
know. Yeah, I don't know if it's true or not. So I can't really speak to that at all.
yeah,
So,
because I'm basing my knowledge on publications by NASA, who were testing plants to, you know, make sure that people could live in Mars.
that's right. Right. I think, yeah. So one of the things you do, of course, is to keep volatile organic compounds out of your house completely.
I'm
And
starting
with
with
the
that,
materials
yes.
you use, yeah, you start with
Yeah.
that, but yeah, and keep the smoke out too. So yes.
I'd love if you can find your source of information saying
I
that
can't
plants.
remember where I read it recently. Yeah, it was someplace just really in the last couple of weeks, I think.
I'd be
Big surprise.
fascinated because we have pure air because we're surrounded by plants anyway. I mean, they must be doing something.
They're up to no good.
All right, thanks, Barbara.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, we're gonna head over to Zach.
All right, thank you very much. So none of this would be possible. This year would not have been, it would have been bereft. It would have been devoid of happy hours were it not for the support of our sponsors. So I want to give all of our sponsors a big shout out for making the work of the Passivhaus Accelerator happen. Our founding sponsors are 475 High Performance Building Supply, Ingley Architects, Glavel Foam Glass Gravel, Minutair All-in-One HVAC and Dehumidification, Mitsubishi Electric Train HVAC US, Partel, RDH Building Science, Stocorp, and Zola Windows. Our stakeholder partner is NYSERDA, and our patron sponsors are BR+A Consulting Engineers, Brennan Insulation and Airtightness, Inotech Windows and Doors, and US Engineered Wood, T-Stud. And we are looking for more sponsors, and we need more support to make everything happen. So if you are interested in joining this fine group of organizations and sponsoring the Accelerator, I'm going to share a link to Tamara Milnick's email address, and you can learn about sponsorship opportunities that way. Thank you.